You're listening to episode number 63 of the Keto Diet Podcast. Today, we're chatting about realizing sugar is a problem and what to do about it, the process of ditching sugar, even when you're craving things on keto, stevia causing cancer, and so much more. So stay tuned. Hey, I'm Leanne from healthfulpursuit.com, and this is the Keto Diet Podcast. Keto is a low-carb, high-fat diet where we're switching from a sugar-burning state to becoming fat-burning machines. Starting keto and maintaining it long-term can be quite a challenge if you don't feel supported. My 60-day program, the Keto Bundle, provides you with clear, step-by-step how-to on successfully adapting to a ketogenic diet, avoiding common ketogenic struggles, and healing your body completely and fully with a ketogenic diet. Go to healthfulpursuit.com/bundle and use the coupon code podcast, all in caps, no spaces, to get 10% off your order, exclusive for podcast listeners only. Now, let's get this party started. Hey guys, happy Sunday. The show notes and full transcript for today's episode can be found at healthfulpursuit.com/podcast/E63. The transcript is added to the post about 3 to 5 days following the initial air date of this episode. Today's episode, we chat a lot about recipes and resources and travel-friendly snacks. So we'll be sure to include all of those in the show notes. Again, that's healthfulpursuit.com/podcast/E63 for all of those resources. Let's hear from one of our awesome partners. I love being Canadian, the home of the True North strong and free, but gosh, am I jealous that y'all in the US get access to Thrive Market. For all of my pals south of the border, my friends at Thrive Market are offering you 35% off your first box of groceries plus free shipping and a 30-day trial. Imagine spending only $9.95 as opposed to the $20.99 on raw cacao powder, or $7.45 on avocado oil mayo as opposed to $13.99 on other online shopping sites. So, on top of their everyday wholesale prices, the extra 35% off your first box of groceries plus free shipping is going to transform a regular $100 grocery run into a $50 to $75 Thrive Market order for the same amount of things. Go to thrivemarket.com/HP to get your instant 35% off. This offer is available to new Thrive Market customers only. Unsure of the link? Simply check out the show notes of today's episode to get all of the details. If you have an idea for a podcast episode or want to submit praise over and above your review, which you can leave by going to healthfulpursuit.com/review, you can reach me at info@ketodietpodcast.com. No announcements today, so let's just get started with today's guest. He was a guest on episode 44 of the Keto Diet Podcast, where we chatted about the authoritative guide to ketosis, his new book that had come out at that time. You can listen to that podcast, episode 44, by going to healthfulpursuit.com/podcast/E44. Our guest today is Ryan P. Lowry, a 2014 national champion baseball player who earned his BS and MS in exercise physiology and exercise and nutrition science from the University of Tampa. Ryan is currently the president of the Applied Science and Performance Institute and is completing his PhD in health and human performance at Concordia University. Over his career, Ryan has published over 100 papers, abstracts, and book chapters on human performance and sports nutrition, and is heavily focused on the impact of ketogenic diets and exogenous ketones on performance, cognitive function, and longevity. Ryan has received the Exercise Science Scholar of the Year Award, NSCA Award for Outstanding Presentation of the Year Award, and most recently, the National AAH PERD Exercise Science Major of the Year Award. Ryan and his business partner, Dr. Jacob Wilson, have launched their book, The Ketogenic Bible, recently in August, which focuses on the science and practical application behind the ketogenic diet, exogenous ketones, and all of their potential applications. I will definitely link up to Ryan's book in the show notes. It's amazing if you're looking for more of a sciencey feel to keto, but like really, really dulled down in order to understand it. And, they never say, do this and you'll be healthy, or do that and it'll be the key to your health and happiness. It's really just, here's a bunch of information, take it or leave it. You can do with it what you may. Today's interview is one of my favorites. Ryan is just such a fun guy to be around and to chat with. And he and I have a very similar relationship to sugar in that we really, 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 really loved sugar. And we still deal with sugar cravings even now, and how we do that on a ketogenic diet, and some tips and tricks for you guys. So without further ado, let's cut over to this interview. The Keto Diet Podcast, including show notes and links, provides information in respect to healthy living, recipes, nutrition, and diet, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Keto Diet Podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without any representations or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice, and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program. Hey Ryan, how's it going today?
Hey Leanne, it's going amazing. How are you?
I'm so good, and I'm really happy that you're back on the show with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be on. I'm glad we were talking a little bit about travel. I'm so glad that you wrapped up your book stuff, and I'm glad to be back in Tampa, back in the saddle, and rested and recovered.
Yeah, it's so important. I missed home so badly, which is interesting because home is also traveling, but when you're traveling for work, it's just different than just being on the road traveling. It's just totally different.
Exactly.
For listeners that may not be familiar with your work, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself if they missed our first episode?
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Ryan Lowry, and I am the president and co-founder of the Applied Science and Performance Institute here in Tampa. And a little bit of my background, we did a lot of research and work in academics. So I grew up an athlete, was always interested in athletics and human performance, but I always had this really a vast interest in not just athletes, but every person and how they can optimize their potential. I think everyone has a huge amount of potential, and we very rarely tap into it. And for me, it was a lot to deal with my family. I have a lot of family members who have autoimmune diseases, and overweight and obesity tends to run prevalent in my family. So my goal in life was, how do I find and optimize performance and different things for them, and make sure that they're living their best lives, and then they can go on and help inspire other people. And I did my undergraduate and master's at the University of Tampa in exercise nutrition science. And then I co-founded and created the Applied Science and Performance Institute after I was done there with my business partner now, Dr. Jacob Wilson. And our ultimate mission and goal with ASPI is really to change lives through science and innovation. And we saw that in academics, that a lot of times when you have these scientists and you have these people publishing tons and tons of information and articles, it's unfortunate because the only other people that can understand them are other scientists and other academics. And if you really want to institute a change and make something effective in this world and help impact a lot of people, you have to make it understandable. And that's why I love your podcast. Absolutely love your book, because you take the science, you take a lot of this information and stuff that you've applied every day in your life, and now you relay it and make it understandable and digestible for everyone to take into their lives and utilize it. So it's an honor to be on here.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. I'm blushing. And I feel the exact same way about you. Reading through your book and kind of piecing things together. You're so great at just hear all the facts made really, really easy for everyone to understand, and you can just make up your own decision. And that's something that I try to do as well, is like, let's just give the information to the people and they can decide what they want to do with it.
Exactly. Empowering them with the tools that they can go and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to use this tool, this tool, this tool. I have this entire toolbox at my disposal, and I'm going to apply it whichever way is best for my life.
Mm-hmm. So let's hone in on the tools and specifically sugar, because it sounds like you and I had very, very similar upbringings with sugar. So why don't you start by telling us, how you grew up, your relationship with sugar, and how you kind of got to keto that way.
Oh man. So I come from a very Italian family, and it was interesting. So growing up, we would have a lot of family functions, and dinner it'd be good, like it would be a nice home cooked meal, but what everyone would look forward to is the dessert. And my mom was, and she still is, the most incredible cook and baker. And so she loves baking cookies and sweets and cakes and you name it, she would make it, especially around the holidays. And so I would eat a little dinner and then just like load up on all these desserts. So I had a huge sweet tooth. In fact, when I was in college, it was funny. A lot of my friends would get like care packages from their parents, and they'd get like food or gift cards to the grocery store. And my mom and dad would send me like 5-pound bags of Swedish fish. And I'd be like, yes, this is the best day ever, because I'd have so much candy because I just ate it all the time. And it literally, looking back on it, it really was like this addiction. It was this addiction to these sweets that just reinforced over and over again. And it was like I'd come back to my dorm room and take handfuls upon handfuls of Swedish fish and gummy worms and Starburst and all these different things just constantly throughout the day. And I didn't even realize at the time what I was doing to my body.
That's so scary, and something that I can relate to so heavily. My parents were really, really into healthy eating. And so my mom on Fridays would have, I think it was like free treat Fridays, where she would let us pick one sugary treat that she'd hide in the house. But I mean, there are only so many places you can hide treats, and I always found them. And so then it became this like binge cycle of, I'm not allowed to have these sweets. I want to eat these sweets. So when I found them, I would eat all of them. And that started this like really unhealthy relationship with sugar. And when I was around it, I would just always just eat everything, very similar to yours, like just handfuls. And I would sandwich different ones together. And I was known as like the candy sandwich person. I would make these big sandwich things of candy and just eat them all. It was disgusting. And you're very right. It was very much an addiction. And I think for me, it was an addiction to that feeling that I got when I had sugar. I'm a rebel, so I really like breaking the rules, and I was breaking the rules and having the sugar and, that sort of thing. And I think so many people can relate to that. So here we are, we're, maybe age 10 to age 20 something, eating all this sugar. What was the switch for you? When did you realize, oh my gosh, what am I doing to my body? Did you realize that, or how was that process?
Yeah, so the funny thing is, so I played baseball all throughout college, and we won the national championship my junior year. And then after that, I had to make a very difficult decision. I was like, well, do I continue playing on and chase this dream for baseball, or do I go after my passion in the science realm and really focus on academics? And I had a lot of internal conflicts, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to go after this science passion. Like, I really feel like I can help inspire a lot of people and empower others by doing this. And I really had this vision of creating ASPI a long time ago. And so I did that. And the minute I stopped playing baseball is the minute my metabolism completely changed. And so I was that kid when I was playing sports in college. I could eat handfuls of Swedish fish and I didn't gain any weight at all. Nothing. Like, it didn't matter what I ate. I could eat horribly and I didn't gain any weight. And people were like, man, you got to put on some size. And my coaches would try and get me to drink weight gainers and all of these different things. And I just couldn't, because my metabolism was ridiculous. But as soon as that stopped, as soon as I stopped playing baseball, my metabolism like shifted very fast. And that summer after, I gained about 10 to 15 pounds, and I realized, whoa, I can't eat like this any longer. My things have completely changed. My insulin sensitivity isn't what it used to be. And it really clicked for me like, hey, I'm heading down this path and this downward spiral. I know what's happened to my family. I know a lot of the situations that my family members face on a daily basis, and I don't want to go down that road at all. And so that's when I really started honing in and going, well, I really need to start paying attention to the foods that I'm eating, all these junk foods and all this sugar that I'm consuming every single day. I drastically need to cut it back. And I kind of just went cold turkey one day and really started realizing that there's a lot of different ways that you can make things enjoyable and sustainable, even when you have like a hardcore addiction, really like what I had.
Whoa. Did you say you quit cold turkey? Did that work?
So didn't. There was binges back and forth on it. It was rough. It was absolutely rough. And over time, it took me a long, long time to realize and really understand, hey, like, this is how you can incorporate in lower sugar options, not just, hey, you have to eat clean. You only have to eat meat and vegetables. That's it. It took me a while to figure out how to incorporate back in certain foods that I enjoy, because I was so afraid of going down that spiral again. I was like, if I have just one cookie, it's going to be 30 cookies because that's what I used to be able to handle. And it's taken me a while to really wrap my head and understand around that, how I can make these alternatives and really incorporate it into a healthy lifestyle rather than this battle inside my head of I'm just going down this rabbit hole of I can't touch anything versus I'm going to binge on everything.
Yeah, I can relate to the binge piece. And I think for me, I would do the same thing. I'd be like, not eating sugar. And then I'd end up at the Dairy Queen takeout line. I don't even know what you call it. Drive-through. That's it. Drive-through, ordering like 3 Blizzards and eating them all on my way home. And I'm allergic to dairy. And I would just be like, I just need all of the sugar. And it would be these binges that would happen. And I think for me, it was just finally realizing that food was just food and it was neither good nor bad. I just chose not to eat sugar because it made me feel like garbage. That was sort of like the clicking moment. More on my interview with Ryan P. Lowry after this message from one of our podcast partners. Support for this podcast comes from Broya. Okay, so I know Canadians always get left out of special podcast offers, but I have one for you. And it involves bone broth, real wholesome quality made bone broth. I've searched high and low for a Canadian bone broth product that I could feel good about sharing, and I've finally found it. Enter Broya, whose organic chicken and grass-fed beef bones are slowly cooked for 24 hours and made with ethically sourced, antibiotic-free, hormone-free Canadian-based ingredients. And total game changer, their single-serve bone broths are perfectly flavored with turmeric, salt, apple cider vinegar, and more. Plus, they come in glass bottles, making Broya bone broth super easy to consume. You can go to broyaliving.com and use the coupon code KETO10, all in caps, no spaces, for 10% off. You mentioned, going back and forth and binging and saying that you finally found something that worked. What were some of those things? Like, did you find that making more low sugar treats yourself worked, or allowing yourself to indulge once in a while, or kind of where did you find your happy place?
Yeah, no, exactly. I think it's a combination of both. So I started experimenting more. Now I absolutely love baking and cooking because I like coming up with different recipes, not only for myself, but I actually just got my mom and dad on keto finally. So for them, my mom was the same way. So she loves these little snacks and these little treats. And so for me, I was like, well, it's personal, yes, for me, but also finding things that are sustainable for them. Like if there's a recipe like cookies or brownies or cheesecake or anything like that, I'm like, you know what, there's a way to make this where I don't have to use 3 cups of sugar and I can still make it taste. I can make it keto. I can make it taste incredible and friendly. And for me, I look at it as like a like ultimately it's like a science experiment. It's kind of like putting something together and saying, okay, well, that didn't work. That either tasted terrible
Yeah.
or you know what, it worked out. This is really good. I can have this once in a while, and I'm not going to binge on it, and I'm not going to be miserable about eating it and be like, oh, I feel terrible because I ate that, because it really is keto friendly in some regard.
Yeah. What are your favorite like keto foods that help satiate that sugar kind of sweet tooth? Because I know that I don't know if I will ever not have a sweet tooth. It's definitely so much better, but I still, if I had a choice between salty or sweet, I would choose sweet every time.
Me too.
Awesome. What are your favorite like go-to things?
Cookies, definitely. So like cookies are a big thing for me. I grew up eating those like chewy, soft Chips Ahoy cookies.
Oh my gosh, me too.
Oh my gosh, those things were like every day. I go through, like people would say, oh, I'll just have one or two. I'd eat like a sleeve every single night. So those, and then also like cheesecake. I used to almost after every baseball game used to go to the Cheesecake Factory, and you get one slice of cheesecake there, and it's like 5,000 calories and like 5,000 grams of sugar. So It's like, it's crazy. But creating these alternatives, those two mainly have been real game changers, so to speak, for me of playing around with different recipes and then having these little, I think, treats every once in a while that I'm enjoying. They're low carb. I use different flours. I like to make a lot of them non-dairy because I think I'm a little sensitive to it, and then I have friends and family members who don't handle it at all. So just playing around with different recipes, but those two definitely are my favorite.
Nice. It's amazing that you have energy to cook, and that's so cool. I really like snacks that are packaged. Like sometimes I just don't have the time. My favorite thing is coconut butter, Artisana coconut butter. Anytime I'm craving something sweet, if I crack one of those open and grab a spoon, and I choose the packets because if I have a jar, I will eat the whole jar. I just love it that much. So I get the packets and then I cut it open and enjoy that, and it always hits the spot. Always. So,
and those are perfect for like on the go too, right? So like we travel a lot, so it's finding those options as well that it is like, hey, you know what? Like I'm going into a meeting, or hey, I'm traveling, I'm going to speak, but I don't want to sit down and grab, like, I love Cobb salads. I don't want to sit down and have like a huge Cobb salad. I got to get something quick. Grabbing something like that packet of coconut butter on the go it's perfect for that type of environment.
So for us two being as in love with sugar as we were, did you find that when you switched keto, all of a sudden the clouds parted, the angels sung, and you were no longer addicted to sugar? I mean, we kind of already chatted about this a little while ago, but I just want to kind of hone in on what was that process like for you? You started eating keto, sounded like, you were still trying to figure out, what keto things will help my sugar cravings. I think a lot of people think, okay, I've been keto for 5 days. Why am I still craving sugar?
Right. So my first experience, I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but my first experience, because I had such intense sugar cravings, the first time I went keto, I'm like, great, this is awesome. I'm going to try and do this and have sweets for every single meal. And the first, I would create something called keto mousse. And it was basically like dark, unsweetened chocolate. It was heavy cream. It was coconut oil and like some sweeteners inside of it and protein powder. And I had that like 5 times a day. And it was the worst experience I've ever had. I went into it, and we were talking with like Dom D'Agostino at the time. And I said, Dom, I said, this keto thing, I was like, I feel horrible. Like, this is awful. I'm craving foods. I'm eating like 6 times a day. And it was terrible, but it was because I tried to make it like so sweet all the time. It was the only thing I knew. I was probably never adapting. I was having so much cream. It was just awful. And so I eventually went back to the drawing board and was like, how do I really rewire this? And I started eating more whole foods, incorporating in things like that, and then started cooking and baking on my own. And soon I realized, I was like, wow, my sugar cravings definitely went down. They absolutely did. But then there's always those times, like you had mentioned, I'm still always going to have cravings for sugar. I'm still going to always walk into a mall or down or somewhere and smell cookies and be like, oh my gosh, like I wish I had cookies right now. But it's finding those alternatives that really was the shift for me, where I got active in the kitchen, or I found alternatives that people are making already in packaged items that I could eat and can handle well, that I knew weren't going to spike my glucose, weren't going to spike my insulin, and still allow me to maintain this flexibility on a ketogenic diet.
Brilliant. And I'll include a lot of the alternatives. I have like recipe roundups of cookies that are keto and fat bombs. And I have a keto mousse recipe that's dairy free. So I'll include all that in the show notes if people are like, but give me your secrets. Awesome. So people can check those out. And how do you feel about fruit? Do you still incorporate that into keto at all, or do you avoid it? Let's talk about fruit.
Yeah, so here, I was the worst eater growing up. So I feel like everyone's gonna be like, wow, this guy is terrible.
I'm right there with you, dude.
So this is how bad it was. Up until freshman year of high school, the only thing I ate for, like, my mom would pack me for school lunch every single day is cereal and milk. And it was all like, I would eat either like Lucky Charms or Fruity Pebble, like anything that was cereal, I ate mainly for all of my meals. And so me growing up eating fruit like wasn't a thing. It was a texture thing. I didn't like it. If it wasn't cereal or like McDonald's or Wendy's, there was a very good chance that I wasn't eating it. So God bless my mom and dad for dealing with me during that time and just handling all of that. But fruit, I've tried to actively start incorporating it more so now that I'm really fat adapted, since I've been on living this lifestyle for so long. I definitely realize a lot of the benefits of certain fruits. So now that my palate kind of has changed, I eat a lot of vegetables now, whereas before I never did. With fruit, it's kind of the same thing. I'm trying to incorporate in, well, obviously, we know that avocado technically is a fruit, so I like trying to incorporating in that. But stuff like berries, like frozen berries, I try and incorporate those more now than I ever have in the past. But that's really the only fruit that I try and incorporate in. Sometimes I'll do like a shake. I'll make like a little shake with some unsweetened almond milk, some MCTs, protein, and I'll try and throw some berries in there, some frozen berries. But that's really the extent of the fruit that I really incorporate in.
Yeah, same with me. Would you consider a plantain a fruit? Is that technically a fruit too? Because sometimes
that's a good question.
I really like plantains for my carb ups.
Yeah, no, those are good. Those are really good.
They're so good. Like the green ones, not the really, really ripe sugary ones, which is crazy because 10 years ago, I loved the sugary plantains. So I think, our conversation around that process, I think a lot of people, are eating the way that we did, Swedish fish and going to McDonald's. And I knew exactly when cheeseburger day was. I couldn't even, maybe it was Thursdays at McDonald's. I don't remember, but I would get that in a Fruitopia and I would have that every Thursday. And, that was maybe 18 years ago now. And it's taken me, this long to get here. So I think a lot of people, hear podcasts of keto people and they're like, I have all my stuff together and I don't crave sugar anymore and all of these promises, and they try it for 5 days and they're wondering why they're not experiencing that. It's a process, and it sounds like that process is still something that you experience every day. If you smell cookies, you're like, I want a cookie.
Exactly.
And that's not keto. And then your solution is really just breathing through that until you can get home and make a cookie? Or what do you do if you're, I don't know, at the mall and you smell a cookie and you're like, oh, now I'm hungry and I want cookies? What do you do in that instance?
That's a good question. Usually, I have a good tolerance now where I can fight through it. And, the amazing thing is this. I've come to a point now where like I can walk in a mall or even in a candy store and say I'm with like friends and they're like, hey, let's go in here. And I really in my head can now rationalize it. And I'll walk into say a cookie store and be like, you know what, this smells great. This is incredible. But I have alternatives that I make that literally in my mind now, I think they taste just as good. And I'm like, well, I don't want to have to. I know the consequence of I'm going to be beating myself up over this and being like, this is terrible. Why did you have like 18 cookies from the store when you could have just came home and had one of your keto friendly ones, or had one of the prepackaged options that are out there on the market now? It's like, I can now have that control because it's been such a process over time where I'm like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it for me to go into this store and binge and indulge, where I know I can just get home. I'll be home in 15 minutes and I'll have one when I'm there. And who knows, by the time I get home, I might not even want one anymore. By then I might be onto something else.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And just taking a step back, I do the same thing. It's like, yeah, those cookies smell really good. I mean, it's easier for me because I'm allergic to gluten and dairy. So I can't just be like, I'll just eat the cookies. So that's definitely an extra layer of, I would say, like protection against those sort of instances. But you're totally right. You smell the cookies, you're like, I want the cookies. And then you're kind of thinking, okay, so if I ate those cookies, what would happen? Well, I would feel like garbage. My mind would be all muddled for 3 days. My stomach would hurt a whole bunch. I'd probably have to, hang out with my friends because I feel like a hot wreck. Is that worth it? And when you start to kind of piece it all together, you're like, actually, that cookie is not sounding so great to me right now.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's awesome. Okay, let's science it a little bit and talk about artificial sweeteners. And that could include keto sweeteners. What are your thoughts on sweeteners? Which is your favorite? There's a lot of people talking right now about how stevia gives you cancer. Let's chat about sweeteners.
Yeah, this is a big topic in the keto world. Definitely a big topic because everyone's trying to make alternatives, and now you're seeing so many products and companies launch with different things that have all of these different sweeteners inside of them. One of the things that first, I think addressing like sugar alcohols is something that is very popular. And originally, if you go to any store, you go to like your local grocery store and you see all these sugar-free options, these candies, be very careful. Be extremely, extremely careful with them because a lot of them use a sugar alcohol like sorbitol or maltitol. And not only do these sugar alcohols have a glucose response, so like maltitol, you actually get a glucose response, but it will absolutely destroy your stomach. Like if you've ever been in like, oh, hey, you know what, I'm going to go to the movies with my friends.
Oh my gosh, me too.
And I've done this. I'm like, I'm going to go to the movies. I was like, I'm going to go grab the sugar-free peanut butter cups over there. Oh. And then it's like, okay, I'm looking on the back of the package. It says 27 grams of carbs, but 26 of them are sugar alcohols. I'm like, oh, okay, so one net carb, right? That's what they tell you. You just subtract it out. And next thing you know, I'm sitting in the movie theater, and I'm like, my stomach's just I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening in there? And it's just the worst experience ever. So just be very, very careful of those.
Yeah, I did the same thing with licorice at a movie with my mom. I was probably like 23 trying to like figure out the whole sugar thing. And I went to this superstore. I got some of that sugar-free licorice and I got through half the pack and then I missed the rest of the movie. Because I was like, not right. Yep. Okay, so note on those for sure. I avoid those like the plague.
Yes, but there's one sugar alcohol that is really, it's like keto friendly. It doesn't have a glucose response. It doesn't have very big impact on your GI for most people, and that's erythritol. And you're seeing that a lot more in different products. Different products are starting to utilize it. It does have like a cooling sensation, so it feels like you kind of had like a little mint in the back end of your throat. But one of my favorite sweeteners that I use for baking purposes when I'm doing all these different things is I use something called Swerve, and it's like a combination of erythritol, oligosaccharides, and just some natural flavoring. And it blends very easily for baking. It's got very low glycemic index, virtually zero, so it's not really having an effect on glucose, and people can tolerate it really well.
And a word of caution for people with erythritol, if you're sensitive to corn, like really allergic to corn, or you're like super hardcore with like avoiding grains, I'm pretty sure erythritol is not going to be good for you.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that, and be very, very careful with where you're getting any of these things from, because a lot of them do source them from like the corn. And so people, like you said, that are very sensitive, I would avoid it like the plague as well.
Yeah.
Like if you're sensitive like that, be very careful with that and stick with some of the more natural things like a stevia or something like that.
Brilliant. And also I learned I have a birch allergy, and I've known this forever, and I didn't know that xylitol was sourced from birch and that I would even react to it. And every time I'd have, like my sugar-free mints or things like that, it had xylitol, and then my throat would get all weird and my mouth would get itchy. And I'm like, what is going on? It's because it's sourced from birch. So note for that too. And what are your thoughts on monk fruit? Do you use it? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Let's talk.
Yeah, so I like monk fruit. The challenge with monk fruit is, and this is another thing that people just need to be careful of and make sure that they're getting it from the right source, is that monk fruit, it ultimately comes from the fruit. It's an extract from that, but there can be a lot of contaminants with some of the like cheaper versions that you find like online or on like you're just like an Amazon. So there's a lot of things that can come along with monk fruit. Like we've tested it out. We've tested out different monk fruits, and you'll see like different strains and certain bacteria that shouldn't be in there that are in a lot of the monk fruits just because it hasn't been extracted properly. So making sure you're getting a good source. It's a great sweetener. A lot of people like it for its sweetness, is a really good profile. But as long as you're getting a high quality source, I think people that enjoy it can definitely utilize it.
I had no idea about that. So that's a really good tip. Thank you so much. Do you have a favorite like brand that you use for monk fruit that you know is safe?
I don't have one I use all the time. It's really just the thing I look at is sometimes, and this is a challenge with anything, it's like usually if it's super, super cheap, there's a reason why it's super, super cheap. But that doesn't mean because something's really expensive that it's better by any means. It's just kind of just doing the research, finding out like, hey, what's your extraction process like? Like, is it what do you guys utilize? What do you guys do? And I tend to stay away from it a lot myself, just because there's very few that I would probably trust. But I'm definitely there are some out there that do the right process and do it the right way.
Okay, cool. I'm going to say I'm about 95% positive that Locanto monk fruit is like really, really awesome. I've met the owners and they seem like they have their stuff together, but I'll do more research, but that's the one that I use, and it's not cheap. So that's a good one.
Companies like that that are out there, number one, and that are educating about their monk fruit or about just any sweetener in general that they have, like companies that are willing to go out there and provide that education, they're probably doing the right thing.
More on my interview with Ryan P. Lowry after this message from one of our podcast partners. The show is partnered up with Paleo Valley, the makers of the only 100% grass-fed and finished fermented beef stick. Each stick contains 1 billion probiotic CFUs, and we all know how important fermented foods are to the health of our gut and the strength of our immune system, as well as boosting overall energy. Chowing down on Paleo Valley's fermented beef sticks provides your body with all of the beneficial bacteria it loves in one convenient little stick. Their gut-friendly sticks are gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, GMO-free, freaky chemical, additive dye, and preservative-free, as well as being 100% free from carbs and sugar, and made with the highest quality ingredients. Exclusive to listeners of the show, you can receive an instant savings of 20% off Paleo Valley fermented beef stick snacks by going to paleovalley.com/keto. And if your jaw is tired just thinking about beef jerky, I gotta tell you that these tasty treats are not tough at all, but moist with a little snap. Again, that's paleovalley.com/keto for an instant 20% off savings. And if you're unsure of the link, simply check out the show notes of today's episode to get all of the details. Thoughts on the whole stevia cancer thing? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, with stevia, I mean, people are always going to say it doesn't matter if it's artificial sweeteners, if it's stevia, if it's anything. There's always going to be this correlational research that people will probably pull at some level going, well, people that tend to take in stevia tend to have higher rates of cancer. And the argument I always make against this correlational research that people present is you can make the same argument for anything. You can make the same argument for I can make the same argument and say ice cream makes people murderers. And you're like, what? Like, how does that happen? Well, if we look at the consumption of ice cream, that tends to go up in the summer. And murders tend to also be high in the summer. So you can make the correlation that ice cream causes people to become murderers. But we all know that that's not the case. And that's just correlational data. And that's the same thing that happens with a lot of these studies that go, oh, this causes cancer. It's like, well, it really doesn't. It's correlational. It's people who may tend to eat more of this tend to have higher cancer, but there's 18 bajillion other things that could be going on that could be leading to that cancer in some aspect.
Yes, something that I repeat to myself, and I'm not even kidding, probably 10 times a day is correlation isn't causation.
Yes.
That is like what I live by. And it's so poetic and it's so perfect. And I remind myself of it constantly, and something I think we also have to do in our health. And I do the same thing. Just because one thing happened doesn't mean that it was caused by this. There's so many variables, even when it comes to your own health, that you need to think of. Something that a lot of people don't know or understand, and I'd love to chat about it a little bit, is the insulin response that we get when we have certain types of sugars. Like, for example, if a sugary sweet thing touches your lips or your tongue specifically, your insulin can be increased. Do you know if that's with all types of sweeteners or just certain types or just sugar? Do you know?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really great point. It can happen with several different things. They haven't done research on every single sweetener, but you do with a lot of these sweeteners, there's sweet receptors in the brain that as soon as it does touch the tongue, you will get a mild insulin or glucose release. The degree of that definitely depends on the sweetener, how much of the sweetener you're using, and then what you're using alongside the sweetener. The one thing I say about artificial sweeteners is if people opt for that, if you're going to utilize artificial sweeteners and you're okay with that, that's your choice. The one thing I recommend to people is go with the raw versions. No matter what, just don't consume the packets where you see them at diners, you see them at restaurants. And if you're like, you know what, well, I'm going to put some Splenda into my packet, like, carry around or find like a raw alternative. The reason being is those packets, the amount of artificial sweetener, the sucralose or the aspartame or whatever's in those sweeteners is like 2%. The other 98% are fillers, which is like maltodextrin and dextrose, which ultimately is sugar. And so I've seen people, and I've known people like this in the past, who don't care about utilizing artificial sweeteners. They're like, cool. And they'll put like 10 packets in something. And I'm like, well, 10 packets and 98% of those 10 packets are like maltodextrin or dextrose. You're definitely going to get a glucose or insulin response because now you literally have a several grams of sugar that you're utilizing at that point, and it becomes very dangerous. So I would just tell people, if they are going to opt for that, raw versions rather than mixed with all fillers and sugar and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, love it. Another thing that people eat that has sugar in it is alcohol, or, alcoholic beverages, or it spikes up certain processes or gets us out of ketosis. Do you drink alcohol?
So sometimes I'll go out with friends, and I keep it very mild and moderate now. My college years are over with the fun and the craziness that happened then, but I always just try and keep it in moderation. I'm a big wine guy. I absolutely love red wine. And I love having like a glass of red wine with like a meal, like a nice dinner that I have. And one of the things is be careful on the choice of alcohol if you are going to indulge in it. If you aren't, that's even better yet. Like if you're gonna just go and not have any, that's incredible. That's great. But if you are, be very cautious of the type, the quantity, of course, of the alcohol. Staying away from dark. If you're a beer person, I don't like beer at all. It's weird. I don't. It's weird. I don't know. I just don't like beer. But stay away from stay away from the dark beers. Those tend to have a lot more carbohydrates. They are making some now, which is interesting to see. And I think this is how the entire keto world and the conversation is taking not only the food industry, but the alcohol industry by storm. Is you're seeing a lot more companies like call out like only 2 grams of carbs in this beer. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting that they're finally starting to at least bring that out. But stay away, stay like with things like those. And then also if you're going to go with more hard alcohol, make sure it's straight or mixed with water, and then utilize like your own sweetener. Just keep it with water. Like people that I know that are keto will go out and have like a vodka water and they'll be completely fine the next day. They won't be really knocked out and they'll just kind of get back on track. So I think it's whatever you would like to incorporate into your lifestyle. It's very easy with alcohols to not even know that something has a lot of sugar. And then you go out and say have a drink or two with friends or coworkers and you wake up the next day feeling horrible, not from a hangover, but just because you got knocked out of ketosis because you had sugar with that. So it's just being very aware and very cautious of that.
Yeah, brilliant. And some thoughts on that. Have you heard of dry farm wines?
Yes, those guys are incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily drink. I stopped drinking for almost 10 years just because I have a very addictive personality. And I just started drinking-ish again. But I'm of the thought, like, maybe if I'm out and I really, really feel like a drink, like when we were moving, I had a cider, like, because I just needed a cider. But I think what can oftentimes happen, and I see this a lot, is that people have a drinking habit. And when they go keto, they drink and they find the okay wines, but they're still drinking and maybe they're plateauing and they're not feeling good. And they're like, I'm sure it's the wine, but I can't stop. And that's, I think, very similar to what we experienced with sugar, of it being an addiction. And it might not be an addiction of the actual item, but an addiction, around alcohol. And there's this habit that's formed, like you have a hard day at work, you go home, you crack open a bottle of wine, you pour it, you sit and you enjoy it. And what do I fill that space with? And I think it's the same thing with sugar. And, you were saying when you got back to your dorm, you're like shoving candy in your face. Like, what do you do if you had a bad day and you don't have candy? Do you see that even with your sugar craving? And how have you, manipulated that to fill your life with other things?
Yeah, no, this is a huge, huge point. A lot of that. So a lot of times when I realize my cravings and I would try and ultimately it's filling some type of void. So the way I would do it is, one, I'd make myself busier. So I'd be like, if I'm sitting at home on a Saturday, like, and I have nothing to do, I'm bored. I know for a fact I'm going to go up to that cabinet and I'm going to start eating this and that and the other thing. And I'm like, what am I? And then the next thing you know, I'm like sitting on the couch. I'm like, what did I just do? Like, what did I just go through? But getting myself busier is something like that I try and do more and more, get out. And I'm not going to indulge and snack every 5 seconds when I'm out with friends or family. And the other thing that's made a huge impact for me is I've always been active, but exercising more, even not if it's like, oh, I have to go to the gym and work out, but something I love doing now is walking, like just taking walks, like take a walk and listen to your podcast, or take a walk and listen to a new TED Talk that just came out. Like, not only am I learning, but it's like I'm getting out, I'm moving, and then when I get back home, have to, like, that craving, identifying it and coming to terms with it, it's likely gone at that point. And I'm like, wow, like I could have just indulged and beat myself up about it for the next couple of days because of the damage that I just did, or I just took a quick walk, 10 to 15 minutes out of my day, learned something on a podcast or something like that, and that craving's gone by the time I got home.
Yeah, it's like getting yourself out of that spiral and neutralizing the situation. I do the exact same thing. I actually, when I really get into it and I really want to do something I know that I'm not going to feel good about or that I'm not going to feel good after, I have like a list on my phone, things to do when you're going down a spiral. And I'm like, I look at that list and I just choose one and I do that. It's like, you know, having a hot bath or going for a walk, going paddleboarding, playing with my dogs outside, just like distracting yourself from it. If I listen to nutrition stuff, it doesn't work. It has to be like a comedy podcast or just something else to just completely get myself out of the funk. But yeah, that's a really good practice. So thanks for sharing that. So there goes another episode. Let's chat a little bit more about your book before we end today's call. Tell us a little bit more about it and where people can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you were a huge inspiration for it. Absolutely. So I absolutely love your book and everything you put together. And we just tried to help expand and build upon all the greatness that you put out in that we took a lot of one of my favorite aspects of it is talking about the history. That was one of my favorite chapters writing in the entire book, was realizing how we got to where we are at, not only just personally, but as a society. Is how did we know about these problems with sugar and all the complexities that come along with it, and why did we get these low fat recommendations, and how did we get to where we're at today, where thanks to people like you and a lot of our friends and thought leaders in the industry are now kind of bringing keto back. It's kind of back in its mainstream. So that, and then also the science behind it and really figuring out all the different applications that it has. I mean, your story is incredible. We have colleagues like Dr. Mary Newport who utilized it for her husband with Alzheimer's. Like, we talk a lot about that in the book, and cancer, epilepsy, traumatic brain injury, like all these different applications that we're studying and our colleagues are studying, and really just fine tuning how you can take that and then apply it for yourself, your family, a loved one, or someone you care about, because it's really about getting this message out to the masses. And so we really just tried to take scientific principles and then make them digester friendly, take them and make them easily understood.
And you have accomplished that wonderfully. So thank you so much for putting it together. And we'll include a link to your book in the show notes. And where can people find you? Do you have an Instagram channel or anything?
Yeah. So Instagram, it's Ryan P. Lowry. My middle name is Patrick. So Ryan P. Lowry, Lowry. And on Facebook, just Ryan Lowry. And one of the amazing things that I love, I think we had connected on Instagram as well, is this community is so incredible. I love interacting, talking, answering with people. It's like, it's the fuel. It's what gets us up. Yeah, I know you're the same way. It's what gets us up early in the morning. It's what keeps us up late, is hearing stories, helping people live out their mission, not only for themselves, but the people that they're trying to help and inspire. So interact, reach out, anything that I could do to help, I'm more than happy to do.
Yes, it's so true. I follow over 5,000 people on Instagram, and like, I actually enjoy following all of those people, and they're all keto, and I just love interacting with them. So I think that's so true. And I really appreciate all the work you're doing in the field of keto and nutrition. The show notes for today's show, plus a full transcript of our episode, can be found at healthfulpursuit.com/podcast/E63. The transcript is added to the post about 3 to 5 days following the initial air date of this episode. We'll make sure to include all of the recipes and sweeteners and things that we chatted about in today's episodes. You can get it all in one place. And thanks again for coming on the show, Ryan.
Oh, thank you, Leanne. It was an honor.
And that does it for another episode of the Keto Diet Podcast. Thanks for listening in. You can follow me on Instagram by searching Healthful Pursuit, where you'll find daily keto eats and other fun things. And check out all of my keto supportive programs, bundles, guides, and other cool things over at healthfulpursuit.com/shop. And I'll see you next Sunday. Bye.